The invisible hero. For 5 years, grieving families received anonymous help during their darkest hours. Hot coffee, warm blankets, someone to hold their hand. When they finally caught him, they learned he was the man who'd lost the most of all. Children's National Hospital was a place where miracles and tragedies lived side by side. The pediatric intensive care unit on the 4th floor was where families came to hope, to pray, to hold vigil over the smallest patients fighting the biggest battles. It was where parents discovered they could survive on 2 hours of sleep and vending machine coffee, where grandparents learned to sleep sitting upright in plastic chairs, where siblings grew up too fast in waiting rooms that smelled like antiseptic and fear. But for 5 years, something extraordinary had been happening in those sterile hallways. Families, in their darkest moments, would find unexpected grace in the smallest forms. A mother who'd been sleeping in the ICU waiting room for 3 days would wake up to find a warm blanket draped over her shoulders and a hot cup of coffee on the table beside her. Not hospital coffee from the machine that had been broken for 2 months. Real coffee, good coffee, the kind that reminded you that comfort still existed in the world. A father who hadn't left his son's bedside for 72 hours would discover a bag of fresh sandwiches in his jacket pocket, along with a note that said simply, "You need to eat. Your child needs you strong." Grandparents who'd driven 8 hours to get to the hospital would find gas cards anonymously placed under their windshield wipers, enough to get them home and back again without worry. Families called him the guardian angel of Children's National. Security cameras never caught him. Staff members never saw him distribute gifts. He moved through the hospital like a ghost, appearing when families needed help most, vanishing before anyone could say thank you. But Marcus Williams wasn't a ghost. He was the night janitor on the 4th floor, and he had been broken by this place long before he ever tried to heal it. Before we continue, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Because this story isn't just about one man's kindness. It's about how we heal from the deepest loss by helping others through theirs. And sometimes the people who give the most are the ones who have lost everything. Marcus Williams clocked in for his shift at 11 p.m. every night, just as the hospital began its transition from the chaos of day to the quiet desperation of night. He walked the same route he'd walked for 5 years, cleaning the same floors, emptying the same trash cans, checking the same supply closets. But Marcus wasn't really there to clean. He was there to watch over the families who couldn't go home. Room 412 housed 7-year-old Emma Rodriguez, who'd been in a coma for 2 weeks after a car accident. Her mother, Sophia, hadn't left the hospital since the day Emma was admitted. She slept in the chair next to Emma's bed, holding her daughter's hand, talking to her about school and friends and all the things they'd do when Emma woke up. Marcus had been watching Sophia for 14 days. He'd seen her refuse to eat the meals well-meaning friends brought, because she was afraid to leave Emma's side even for a few minutes. He'd watched her survive on vending machine crackers and the exhaustion that comes with hope stretched too thin. Tonight, Sophia had finally fallen asleep in the uncomfortable chair, her head tilted at an angle that would give her a terrible crick in her neck. Her hand was still wrapped around Emma's small fingers. Marcus moved through the room like a whisper. He pulled a soft blanket from the supply cart he'd modified for his real mission, and draped it gently over Sophia's shoulders. On the bedside table, he placed a thermos of hot soup, homemade chicken and rice, the kind his grandmother used to make when he was Emma's age and believed the world was safe. Under Sophia's purse, he slipped an envelope containing $200 in gas cards and grocery store vouchers, along with a note written in careful handwriting. "Emma is fighting hard. You need to fight too. That means eating, sleeping, and taking care of yourself. She needs her mama healthy for when she wakes up." Sophia stirred, but didn't wake. Marcus checked Emma's IV line, adjusted her blanket, and whispered a prayer he'd been saying for 5 years. Please God, let this one make it home. Down the hall, the Kowalski family kept vigil over their newborn son Tommy, born 3 months premature and fighting for every breath in the NICU. Paul Kowalski worked construction and had already missed 2 weeks of work to be at the hospital. His wife Maria was recovering from an emergency C-section and couldn't drive. They lived 2 hours away and had been sleeping in the family lounge, surviving on hope and whatever meals the church ladies brought. Marcus found Paul in the family kitchen at 2 a.m., staring at an empty coffee pot and looking like a man who'd forgotten how to function in the world. His work clothes hung loose on his frame. He'd lost weight in the past 2 weeks, too worried to eat, too poor to eat well, even when he remembered to try. Coffee machine's been broken for 3 days, Paul said when he saw Marcus. He didn't recognize the janitor as anything more than another night shift worker, sharing the burden of sleepless hours. I know, Marcus replied, but there's a 24-hour diner about a mile from here. Good coffee, better food. You should go get some. Paul shook his head. Can't leave. What if something happens? What if Tommy needs us? Marcus had heard this conversation 1,000 times from 1,000 different parents. The irrational but completely understandable belief that their presence was somehow keeping their child alive, that leaving, even for an hour, would be the moment everything fell apart. I understand, Marcus said, and he did, more than Paul would ever know. But you know what? Tommy's nurse tonight is Sarah Chen. She's been doing this for 15 years. If anything changes, even the smallest thing, she'll call you immediately. And the diner delivers. You could order food and eat it in the family lounge. Get some real nutrition in your system. Paul considered this. We don't really have money for restaurant food right now. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. My treat, man to man, father to father. Sometimes we all need help. Paul's eyes filled with tears. I can't take your money. You're not taking it. I'm giving it. There's a difference. Marcus pressed the 20 into Paul's hand. Order enough for Maria too. And maybe some of that apple pie. I hear it's pretty good. What Paul didn't know was that Marcus had been watching the Kowalski family for 2 weeks. He'd seen Paul count change in the parking lot to afford vending machine dinners. He'd seen Maria cry when she thought no one was looking, not just from the physical pain of surgery, but from the financial stress of missing work and accumulating hospital bills. The $20 bill Marcus gave Paul was part of a larger mission. Marcus had been using his entire paycheck and most of his savings to help families like the Kowalskis. Gas cards, meal vouchers, grocery gift certificates, cash for parking meters and vending machines. 5 years of giving everything he earned to people who needed it more than he did. Because Marcus Williams knew what it was like to need help and not receive it. He knew what it was like to lose everything that mattered while the world continued on, indifferent to your pain. 6 years ago, Marcus had been the grieving father sleeping in a hospital chair. His son David had been 8 years old, diagnosed with leukemia on a Tuesday in March that changed everything forever. Marcus and his wife, Catherine, had spent 6 months living at this same hospital, in these same rooms, holding vigil over their only child, while he fought a war his small body couldn't win. They'd burned through their savings in the first months. Marcus took unpaid leave from his job as an electrician to stay with David. Catherine quit her position at the bank because someone needed to coordinate treatments, insurance claims, doctor appointments, and the 1,000 other details that come with watching your child die slowly. They'd slept in the same uncomfortable chairs that the current families used. They'd survived on the same vending machine food and the same false hope that love could cure cancer if you just loved hard enough. But 6 years ago, there had been no guardian angel watching over Marcus and Catherine. No anonymous gifts of coffee or blankets or gas cards. They'd faced their son's illness alone, burning through their resources, their health, their marriage, and finally their hope. David died on a Thursday in September. with autumn rain streaking the hospital windows and his parents holding each hand. In his final moments, David looks up at Marcus and whispered, "Daddy, will you help the other kids who get sick like me?" Marcus had promised, yes, of course yes, anything his son wanted. But grief has a way of making promises feel impossible to keep. The funeral bankrupted them. The medical bills destroyed their credit. Catherine blamed Marcus for not getting David to doctors sooner, even though the symptoms had been invisible until it was too late. Marcus blamed himself for the same reason. Their marriage collapsed under the weight of loss and blame, and the simple fact that they reminded each other of the child who wasn't coming home. Catherine moved to Seattle to live with her sister. Marcus moved into a one-bedroom apartment and took the first job he could find that would pay him enough to survive. The night janitor position at Children's National Hospital was available, and Marcus took it without thinking about the irony of returning to the place where his son had died. For the first year, the job was torture. Every room held memories of David. Every child reminded him of his son's smile. Every grieving parent reflected his own broken heart. Marcus cleaned floors and emptied trash, and tried not to think about the fact that he was working in the graveyard of his own happiness. But somewhere in that first year, Marcus began to notice things. The same patterns of exhaustion and desperation he'd experienced as a parent. Families sleeping in chairs that weren't designed for sleeping. Mothers who hadn't eaten a real meal in days. Fathers trying to hold everything together while their own worlds fell apart. And Marcus realized he could help them in ways no one had helped him. It started small. Marcus would accidentally leave extra coffee in the family kitchen. He'd make sure the blanket supply was well stocked in waiting areas. He'd replace broken vending machines faster than usual, and sometimes add his own money when families were short on change. But as Marcus watched more families struggle through their darkest hours, his mission expanded. He began using his entire paycheck to buy gift cards, prepaid gas cards, grocery vouchers. He'd leave them anonymously for families who needed them most, along with carefully written notes of encouragement. The notes were the hardest part to write. What do you say to parents whose child might die? How do you offer comfort when you know that sometimes love isn't enough to save anyone? Marcus had learned to write what he wished someone had written to him and Catherine 6 years ago. You are not alone. Your child feels your love. Take care of yourself so you can take care of them. Simple words that acknowledged the impossible situation these families faced. For 5 years, Marcus had been the guardian angel he'd needed when David was dying. He'd given away everything he earned and most of what he'd saved, living on rice and beans and thrift store clothes so that other families could have gas money and warm meals, and the knowledge that someone cared about their struggle. The system worked perfectly until the night Marcus finally got caught. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday when Sarah Chen, the NICU nurse, decided to check on the family kitchen. She'd been working double shifts because of staffing shortages and needed coffee to survive the rest of her night. What she found was Marcus Williams, the quiet janitor, carefully arranging care packages on the kitchen counter. There were 10 packages total. Each one contained homemade soup in thermoses, fresh sandwiches, fruit, cookies, and an envelope with gift cards and cash. Each package had a family's name written on it, in Marcus's careful handwriting. Rodriguez family, room 412. Kowalski family, NICU. Patterson family, room 407. Marcus looked up when Sarah entered the kitchen. For a moment, they stared at each other. The nurse who'd wondered for years